Welcome to Metaphysical Girl, a podcast about the intersection of art and esoterica. My name is Saint. I'm a Sunday Times and USA Today bestselling novelist and a lifelong student of religion, folklore, and ritual. In this episode, we're going to be unpacking the powerfully transformative but much dreaded Saturn return. We'll be exploring Saturn not only as a planet in astrology, but a teacher who takes many forms. And I'll be sharing the freaky strategy I used to survive mine. Saturn is about to go direct in Aries on February 13th of 2026. If you were born roughly between 1996 and 1999, you are in your Saturn return right now. You've had a little bit of a break as Saturn has retrograded back through Pisces and lit me up one final time. But if you are in the Saturn and Aries generation, hopefully what I have learned will be helpful for you as we really enter into Saturn in Aries proper. So, without further ado, let's step into the metaphysical world together. Your Saturn return is a roughly 3-year-long period during which Saturn, the planet of duty, discipline, and the passage of time, returns to the same position in the sky it was when you were born. Saturn returns for each of us roughly every 30 years, meaning that those of us who are lucky to live long lives will feel the effects of a Saturn return in our late 20s, mid-50s, and 80s. It's one of the landmark transits of anyone's life, and it typically forces us to reckon with our responsibilities, our mortality, and which legacies we're building and leaving behind. As Saturn forces you to face what you think you want from life and what you have been told is good for you, it also forces you to reckon with what you truly desire and what is aligned with your holistic flourishing. The inner child is always within us, but the Saturn return also marks for many of us the final death knell of childhood, those patterns and habits and belief systems that we've carried with us into adulthood that may have served us or even saved us as children that really no longer have a place in our lives. It can bring the end of Nayatev, but leave something with more depth and value in its place. So you can see why people sometimes are a little bit nervous. I'm sure you've talked to many a 27, 28, 29-year-old. You're at the party and everyone's like, gosh, my life is just upside down, topsy-turvy, high highs, low lows. I feel like everything I thought was true is just completely evaporating. And somebody at the party is like, yep, Saturn return. Saturn returns are often destabilizing and uncomfortable. Just like think of how many people change careers, move cities, get divorced, or step into a new parenting role in their later 20s. A lot of people come out in this time in their life. Queer folks do. People make these huge life changes. A great blessing lies on the other end of that return, and it's a deeper sense of integrity. Saturn offers us true self-knowledge and the discipline and patience to do the work we're meant to do in the world. I must remind you that I have no formal astrological training and I'm not a professional astrologer. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this. I think about it a lot. But if you're interested in working with a professional astrologer to explore your natal chart and what to expect from your own Saturn return, I highly suggest Janelle Belgrave of So Above Astrology and Ursula of Ursula Rising, both of whom are linked below in the show notes, both of whom I've worked with for years. I love and respect and highly recommend those women. If you're interested in learning more about Saturn in general, please go read Saturn, A New Look at an Old Devil by Liz Green. It might change your life. It's certainly changed mine. In this episode, I'm going to give you some tips for figuring out which part of your chart, and therefore which part of your life, Saturn will be lighting up during your return, and share some more experiential wisdom I've gained about this planet. We'll talk about some archetypes that you can work with and some tarot cards as well that might be helpful. So, who is that grumpy old timekeeper in the cosmos, the stern sky daddy and king of reaping what you sow? Saturn is the 6th planet from the sun and the slowest moving planet understood by traditional astrology. If we think of the planets as not just celestial orbiting bodies, but metaphysical entities that embody certain energetic qualities, bounce off each other in cyclical patterns, and influence human hearts and human affairs, Saturn is associated with restriction, endings, structure, maturity, and to imperfectly borrow a term, karma. He's known as the Greater Malefic, one of the planets often associated with pain, suffering, hardships, and setbacks. There's been a little bit of a push to totally rehabilitate the malefics in modern astrology and always look on the bright side of them. And while I don't completely ascribe to that view, I do think there's something really valuable about remembering that all those things I listed are not always bad. They often come paired with blessings. They're certainly not bad all the time, and even something painful can ultimately lead us towards our highest good, tempering us like metal in a forge until we emerge stronger. I love envisioning Saturn as the archetype of teacher, which in itself can take many forms. Saturn can be the headmaster, making you do drills over and over again until you learn the lesson correctly. Or the martial arts master who asks you to do uncomfortable menial tasks because it's those very uncomfortable menial things that sharpen the day-to-day skills you need to develop mastery over yourself and over your craft. I, however, am also very scorpionic and I love a bit of edgy romance, and I've come to also think of Saturn as the archetypal hard-to-please dominant who teaches by maintaining control and creating structure within pain for the ultimate betterment, sometimes even the pleasure of his submissive. This is very freaky alchemical psychosexual astrology, I know, but that's the reason you're listening to this podcast, isn't it? Saturn will tie you to a St. Andrew's cross and break you in just the right ways, the ways you ultimately need to be broken in order to step into your own power. He will demand you follow high service protocol while coming behind you and fixing your form over and over again until the execution is perfect. Saturn will find that raw material within you that is underdeveloped and bring it to the forefront with discipline, even if discipline is sometimes painful. But what does the pilgrim spirit of an eager submissive say when they receive that crack of the whip? Thank you, sir. May I have another? Listen, what you cannot change, romanticize, and what you cannot romanticize, fetishize. Whatever gets you through the Saturn return, baby. There's a lot to be said for leaning into our discomfort, for allowing this experience to illuminate the dark parts of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that we may repress, that not allowed to find expression. So much of many people's 20s is spent trying to perform success, trying to do the right thing, hit the high notes, please their parents, please their boss, please their friends. We look at these maps that we see other people following and we think, great, if I just check these boxes, if I get this job or if I get this degree or if I'm married by this time, if I'm the person other people want me to be, surely I will be fulfilled. I will find ultimate satisfaction and happiness. Some people spend their 20s running from responsibility and fucking around and finding out and experiencing a lot of different things and avoiding deep commitment, deep challenge and attachment. And I think both of these responses are kind of extreme reactions to the fear of knowing who we are and what we desire and what we are called to do and what it costs us. But that is the wisdom that Saturn holds. I wish I could tell you your Saturn return will be totally smooth if you just do the inner work beforehand, get all your karmic ducks in a row, it'll be fine. It is true that people tend to have a slightly easier time when Saturn turns up the heat if they've already been developing their Saturnian qualities. But the best advice I can possibly give you is to surrender. Surrender to the ways this season in your life will reshape you. If I may belabor the earlier metaphor, you must submit of your own free will. Almost exactly like the death card in tarot, which is of course Saturnian. If you don't come willingly with Saturn, you're gonna get dragged. And if getting dragged around a little bit turns you on, be my guest. Far be it from me to tell someone not to brat at the universe. It is one of my favorite pastimes. I love to experience an intense sensation. I'm just trying to be your esoteric big sister here and let you cheat off my test because Saturn truly put my ass through the ringer in the last couple of years. And trust me, we are gonna get into it. But right now, here's what you're gonna do. You're going to head over to your Astrofuture app or your Chani app and pull up your natal chart, and you're going to find the house that Saturn is in your own unique chart. If you need to call your mom and get your exact birth time, don't worry, I'll be here. Then I'll walk you through which area of your life Saturn is likely to light up when he swings back around for your return. Hello, Saint here to quickly remind you that Metaphysical Girl is a listener-supported project that includes not only this podcast, but twice monthly essays, private tarot readings, and the whole community over on Substack. So if you enjoy what you're hearing here, please like and follow this podcast on your favorite platform and consider subscribing to saint.substack.com to get all the Metaphysical Girl goodness right in your inbox. Thank you so much for being here and for all your support. Okay, super quick rundown of the houses. They're the slices of the pie of your natal chart if you're looking at the wheel, and they're always numbered 1 through 12. Each house is where certain matters of your life live. And the planets that fall into those houses bring their own energetic influences into those matters. I know this is like brain melting, but it's truly tip of the iceberg stuff. It's crazy how complex astrology can get. But starting by knowing which house Saturn is going to ask you to take that long, loving look at will help you think ahead, maybe audit that part of your life. The first house rules your appearance, ego, and self-concept. The relationship you have with yourself and the orientation of yourself out towards the outer world lives there. It sort of feels like your musical theater I Want song. It's your own energetic signature. The second house rules possessions and cash money, both in how you bring in income and how you tend to spend, save, or lose it. More broadly, it's concerned with your relationship to material possessions and the resources you have to leverage to get where you want to go in life. The third house rules communication, how you share your ideas with the world and get your point across in intimate relationships. It rules honesty or deceit, and the things in life you're intellectually curious about. It's also concerned with your relationships to your siblings or cousins, technology, trade, and transportation. The fourth house rules the home and the family of origin. This can be where ancestral wounds and ancestral gifts live. It's privacy, who you are behind closed doors and the intimacy of your own home. What makes us feel safe and materially secure. Your relationship to your roots, and delightfully, also your pets. The fifth house rules pleasure, play, the children in your life, and romance, particularly the parts of romance that can feel like a game, like flirtation, seduction, or dating and courtship rituals. It sometimes has things to say about how you handle risk, and it's really concerned with self-expression and authenticity, particularly the way that you express yourself through the arts. The sixth house rules daily routine, rituals, the grind, your health and fitness, all those tiny habits that make up the sum of a life, your work and your labors. More in the sense of how you're approaching tasks and challenges on a day-to-day level, your work ethic, more than the large-scale arc of your career. The seventh house rules partnership, both long-term romantic partnership and business partnership, any relationship in which mutuality and cooperation and compromise are key. Marriage and mergers both live here, as well as diplomacy and all contractual matters. The eighth house is about death and rebirth, transformation, and all kinds of deep, dark intimacy that we both desire and fear. It's about commitment and our orientation towards it. Sex, magic, and the occult live here, as well as other people's money, which could rule our relationship to debt, inheritance, or managing resources on behalf of others. The ninth house is where our adventuring spirit lives. It's about travel, education, and academia, encountering new cultures and perspectives, philosophy, ethics, and the construction of culture. It also really affects our belief systems and how we approach the matters of belief, whether it's our relationship to institutional religion or shared community value. The 10th house is all about our public reputation, social status, fame, and the mark you and your career will leave on the world. This house has a lot to say about what motivates you, how ambitious you are, the impact you want to have, and very importantly, what makes success meaningful to you. 11th house rules our communities and social networks, as well as our friends. It speaks to our need for connection and belonging and the trouble we sometimes have finding it, as well as matters of charity, abundance, and collective hopes and dreams. It's the house of mutual aid, it's the house of dinner parties, and it's the house of going out with your girls. Finally, the 12th house is concerned with our subconscious, our spirituality, the way that we seek or struggle with isolation and seclusion. All the endings of things live in the 12th house. It's concerned with catharsis and forgiveness, what confines us and what sets us free, surrender, mysticism, ego death, and renewal. Astrology is the least one-size-fits-all thing in the world. Every single detail of your chart, down to the degree, affects the way your chart manifests in your life, which is why it's important to look at your chart with an astrologer if you're interested in getting really into the weeds with this stuff. But taking a look at the house is a great place to start. I'll be honest, I was pretty frightened of my return, and I tried to prepare years in advance for it. I was meeting with my astrologer, doing all my journaling and self-care, reflecting on what needed to change. My Saturn, as I mentioned above, is in Pisces, a sign all about spirituality and emotions and intuition. And it's in my 10th house of fame and career. So I looked at all that and I said, 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. I'm already an artist who's built a successful career creating deeply emotional art. I turned in my homework early. I'm done. I'm healed. I fear this was not the case. I don't want to go too in depth into some really big personal changes that happened during my return, but it was full of high highs and some very dark lows. Every bad habit I had around my compulsive overworking and my lack of boundaries in my relationships really came home to roost around the same time. And interestingly enough, prolific work and boundaries are two things Saturn and Pisces in the 10th house is really concerned with. I had this growth at all costs mindset. I was terrified to stop working because I thought my worth rested on the work. And I thought that if I stopped, there'd be no work for me ever again. I had 3 jobs at one point in time, guys, one of which was a full-time 9 to 5. And that's not a brag. It's not good. It wasn't good for me or my body or the people that I loved. On the outside, everything looked spectacular, especially when I started publishing and I entered that scene. I had an astronomical rise after my debut novel, A Dowry of Blood, was indie published, went viral, and was picked up by a major publisher. I started releasing 2 books a year, doing domestic and international tours, working with some of my heroes, not slowing down, not taking breaks. Go, 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 push, push, push. If I feel bad about myself, if I feel worried or anxious about anything in my life, work harder. On the outside, everything looked great, but my inner life was fracturing. And my spiritual life, which had been so long neglected, really started to ask for my attention. Obviously, I'm a very spiritual person. I even went to seminary to train to become an Episcopal priest. At the time, I had this strong sense that my purpose was to do some kind of professional spiritual work as a priest or a spiritual director or a tarot reader, something to help people find God in or out of a church, whatever shape God took, to be curious and open to experience alongside other human beings in that way, and to help them heal from religious abuse or trauma in the process. However, I got pretty burned by trying to fit myself into the cookie cutter of a priest. I wanted to make arts. I wanted to live loud. I wanted sovereignty and sexuality and abundance and experience and the space to make a glorious mess of my life, if that's what needed to happen, without hurting anyone else or letting down a parish. So I gave up that dream. And I threw myself totally into my other dream, telling stories. I followed that path instead. I thought that the early rejection of a career in religion was the final word. But in the end, it was only the beginning. Saturn swung back through the sky in my late 20s and said, "Oh, you think it's over? We are just getting started." My Saturn return brought a lot of spiritual experiences and curiosity back into my life. And it's true, some of them were painful or uncomfortable, but some of them were really beautiful and unexpected. It made me realize that this was a part of myself I couldn't deny or really even live without. I'm really not built for a totally secular, unenchanted life. So I was forced to face this terror. Again, there's that fear I had about being judged or rejected or even vilified and punished for my spiritual eccentricities. I grew up in a pretty conservative evangelical strain of Christianity. My nervous system really believed that it was not safe to be spiritually different or deviant. I also had to make peace with the sadness I felt about not being really able to fit into any one spiritual community perfectly. I do have this craving to be the goodest girl and approved by everyone, but I think ultimately it's not healthy and it's not mature. That is the desire of a child. A woman can stand 10 toes down on who she is and what she believes and make other people a little bit uncomfortable, and that's okay. So it reopened that wound, that desire for community, but it also reopened my love for esoteric learning. I started communicating with people on that spiritual spiritual level again, cultivated spiritual practices in my life that I hadn't done in years. And I let myself write about it too. I found that in sharing my writing on this subject without any fear of being judged, knowing that I would be judged and that it's literally all good and none of my business because everyone is on their own path and that I am safe regardless of what people think of me, I actually started to attract that community I so craved. I did regain my ability to engage with institutional religion and formalized spiritual groups in a healthy, low-key kind of way, but I also took back up this desire that I felt to create a radically curious, intellectually honest, and emotionally authentic spiritual community for people like me. And here you are, metaphysics aplenty out there on the airwaves. I say all this because transformation is terrifying. If you could see what you would be reborn into during the process of dying, it wouldn't be death. It wouldn't be total surrender, total trust in your own evolution. But I want you to know there are blessings waiting for you if you simply have eyes to see them. You've just got to get radically humble and make friends with a little bit of pain to get there. Pain can be fun sometimes, but most importantly, it's often cleansing. It burns away the old self so that the new one may emerge. So do not be afraid to say, "Thank you, Daddy Saturn. May I please have another lesson?" If you're a tarot reader like me, or even just tarot curious, there are a few cards you can contemplate or work with in your practice in order to encounter Saturnian energy, to try it on, to wrestle with it, to meet Saturn in his many guises, which often, of course, leads us to meet new parts of ourselves. The Death card is going to be the midwife of your journey. When Death appears in your tarot deck, ask what Death is asking you to surrender. And if you are able, see if you can let that go with open hands so that you may receive whatever is meant for you next. I also love working with the Emperor card. Controversial choice. He's not everybody's favorite. He has that stern paterfamilias thing going on. This is such a daddy issues card. Like, he pisses me off because he's so rigid and traditional and domineering, but he also compels me. I'm also a little bit curious about what exercising that kind of power and self-control might feel like, if there's any wisdom to be gleaned from traditional ways of thinking, even if I'm then going to use that wisdom in my own innovative, freaky little journey. In some decks, he's a grumpy old man, and in some decks, he's hot. And ain't that just the way of these things? Top recommendation for hot Emperor card, if you're interested, is the one from the Erotic Tarot, which will be the subject of a future Metaphysical Girl After Dark episode at the paid tier. Finally, for something slightly different, more oriented towards that mom, I am a rich man vibe, sugar daddy feeling, work with the King of Pentacles, a master of his craft, the head of his company, you could say, someone whose 401k and Roth IRA are maxed out, majority shareholder, undisputed titan of industry. I love channeling this energy, especially as someone who works as an artist. It's a field that can be more emotionally driven and the money really ebbs and flows. And everybody likes to say, we don't do this for money and none of us are making a living, but this is my living. He really helps me sharpen up and ask for what I'm worth. I feel like a head bitch in charge when I'm working with the energy of this card. He's very, if you want to see me buy a ticket to the show, if you want to go on a date, you got to schedule it through my assistant. I love this card. You can try journaling, even if you don't have a deck. You can look at some of the pictures online of different decks, remembering that tarot isn't just about the associations in the little white book. It's about how the picture makes you feel, the symbols that you see personally, what this archetype raises in you. A little free form journaling can be really fun. Collaging is also super fun. But if you do have a deck, pulling that card out and placing it where you can see it every day, on your altar if you have one, or your work desk, can be super helpful. The cards are always willing to lend you their strength if only you ask for it. No matter whether you're approaching your Saturn return, in the thick of it, or already through it, I hope it's ultimately nourishing and empowering for you. Your return is about shedding leaves, which decay on the forest floor to fertilize and nourish your deepest roots. So stay wise, stay strong, and remember that whatever doesn't kill you can be turned into a kinky little game you're playing with the universe. That's all I've got for you this time, beloved seekers. Be safe and well until we two meet again.